This cruise wasn't supposed to surprise me. It was a box to check, adults only, party heavy, and totally outside my usual vibe. But by day 5 on the Valiant Lady, something happened I genuinely didn't expect. Not only did it change how I see Virgin Voyages, it made me rethink everything I thought I knew about cruising. And what triggered that shift? Well, you'll see. Hey y'all, I'm Evan with Family at Sea, where we help make every cruise unforgettable. The Valiant Lady is Virgin Voyages' bold, adults-only take on cruising with no kids, no buffets, and no Broadway shows. It's just a whole lot of attitude and a vibe that couldn't be more different from the ships you're used to. I sailed during one of their themed comedy cruises with my 20-something nephew along for the ride, and we weren't sure what to expect. And well, over our 5-day sailing, we got answers and a few surprises we didn't see coming. So in this review, I'll show you what stood out, what missed the mark, and what you need to know before booking your first Virgin voyage. If you're ready, I am. Let's go. Before we get too deep into this, I want to be completely transparent. Virgin Voyages gave me some onboard perks for this trip, but I paid for the cruise myself, and they're not paying me to make this video. And honestly, that was non-negotiable. I told our team from the beginning that if I was going to review the experience, it had to be my experience. Unfiltered, unedited, and as honest as I'd be with my closest friends. And to their credit, they didn't just agree, they encouraged it. They made it clear that authenticity matters to them just as much as it does to me, and I imagine you. That level of transparency wasn't what convinced me to book the cruise, but it absolutely gave me more confidence in the decision I had already made. Still, I wasn't walking on board as a believer. Virgin Voyages branding raised more questions than answers for me, and the only way to sort out the signal from the noise was to see it all firsthand. So I boarded the Valiant Lady with an open mind, low expectations, and a plan to figure out what this cruise line is really offering once you peel back the marketing. The Valiant Lady is the second ship in Virgin Voyages' 4-ship fleet, and while each of these ships share a nearly identical design, the vibe on board can be felt wildly different depending on the itinerary and the crowd it draws. She holds just under 2,800 passengers, and at 110,000 gross tons, this isn't a megaship in size, but it punches above its weight and personality. There's no main dining room, no buffet, no dress code, and no kids. Instead, Virgin Voyages ripped up the traditional cruise playbook and built something for adults who want great food, stylish spaces, and a more laid-back kind of fun. There's more than 20 included eateries, everything from Korean barbecue to vegetarian fine dining, plus clever touches like hammock balconies, wellness spaces scattered around the ship, and immersive shows that are more edgy cabaret than Broadway glitz. While the Scarlet Lady got all the buzz as Virgin Voyages' debut ship, the Valiant Lady quietly improved on the formula. Menus got refined, service got sharper, and the entertainment lineup feels tighter and more polished. If you're someone who's used to big stage productions or main dining room rituals, this might feel a little bit upside down at first. But if you're the kind of person who wants a cruise that feels like a trendy boutique hotel crossed with a music festival at sea, then yeah, this ship might be your new favorite escape. Sailing on the Valiant Lady doesn't hit quite as hard as some of the megaship price tags, but it's still far from budget cruising. For a typical 5-night sailing for 2 people, an interior cabin usually runs between $1,200 and $1,600. An ocean view is $1,400 to $1,800. And if you want a balcony, which is called a sea terrace on Virgin Voyages, you're looking around $1,800 to $2,400. Those prices include Wi-Fi, gratuities, access to all restaurants, basic drinks, and fitness classes, so even at the entry level, you're getting more baked into the fare than most other lines. Suites, referred to as rockstar quarters on Virgin Voyages, come in around $4,000 to $6,000 for the same sailing, and that unlocks a larger cabin, upgraded bathroom, access to Richard's rooftop, a stocked bar with 2 full-size liquor bottles of your choice, early dining reservations, and a rockstar agent. Mega Rockstar jumps to $8,000 to $11,000 and beyond, but includes unlimited premium drinks anywhere on the ship, airport transfers, daily laundry, front-of-line access for tenders, a pre-cruise concierge, and a fully stocked bar with 4 bottles of top-shelf liquor. It's a widespread, but one thing's clear, this isn't budget cruising. And when you're dropping that kind of money, you want the entire experience, from booking to boarding to go as smooth as possible. And that's why we always book through Cruises It. They've saved saved us money, unlocked perks we didn't even know we qualified for, and always make sure we don't end up like Frank, who brought his expired passport to the terminal and asked if they could just look the other way. Frank, buddy, this isn't a speakeasy. There's no secret knock that gets you on board. With their low price guarantee and actual humans who know cruising inside and out, Cruises It makes planning your trip easier and a whole lot less stressful. Click the link in the description or give them a call using the number on the screen below. Let them know Evan from Family at Sea sent you. You'll be glad you did. As we settled into the cruise, one thing became clear fast. Virgin Voyages' approach to food is totally different. And not just for the sake of being different, but genuinely better. They don't do buffets. Instead, they have a galley, which is a European-style food hall made up of fast, casual venues, each serving something fresh. Think ramen, tacos, sushi, burgers, and diner-style breakfast. It's all included, and most of it is made to order. The quality was much better than you'd find in a typical buffet, but with the variety, I never found myself wanting for something that wasn't available. The included specialty dining restaurants were mostly very good, but two stood out. Gunbae is their Korean barbecue spot that turns dinner into a full-blown experience. You're seated with strangers at a circular table for 8 with a grill in the center. By the end of the meal, they were some of our new friends for the rest of the cruise. It's interactive, social, and feels more like a dinner party than a traditional restaurant. There's even a drinking game that gets people laughing and having fun. Typically, they'll play it at the start of your meal to break the ice, but our server was honestly struggling to keep up, so we didn't get to play until the end of our meal after asking several times. So the service may be a bit inconsistent, but it was still a great experience overall. And then there was a test kitchen, which is a totally different dining experience altogether. It's a 6-course tasting menu with no real descriptions, just a list of ingredients like mushrooms. It leans a bit experimental, and I know some people don't like it, but we loved it. Every course was a surprise, the pacing was tight, and it felt like a rare cruise experience where the meal actually kept you curious. The crew was another highlight. Instead of a cruise director, Virgin Voyages has a cast of characters they call their happening cast, and they weave in and out of your sailing like you're living inside a quirky improv show. I'll be honest, I was skeptical at first. It sounded like an awkward, forced attempt to be different just for the sake of being different. But the execution was clever and subtle. One moment you're sipping coffee, and the next you're pulled into an interactive scavenger hunt or chatting with someone in character about secret ship rituals. It added an unexpected layer of immersion, and somehow it worked. The grog walk took that same energy and turned it into one of the best bar crawl experiences I have ever had on any ship. It wasn't just about drinks, it was a passport-style challenge that took us to different bars, and at each one you had to complete a silly or clever icebreaker with strangers to earn your drink before moving on to the next bar. Surprisingly, it didn't feel forced at all. It was genuinely fun and made connecting with other passengers feel effortless. That energy kept building throughout the sailing until it peaked on Scarlet Night. This isn't just some deck party, it starts with mysterious pop-ups and performances scattered around the ship with subtle clues that something wild is about to happen. And through the evening, it escalates into a massive red-themed celebration up on the main pool deck with dancing, costume performers, and lights bouncing off the water. I remember watching the pool party begin to unfold, and at one point I told my nephew that joined me for the cruise that we'd stick around for 10 or 15 minutes to get some footage, and then we'd go find something else to do. Well, as they say, famous last words. Not only did we stay until the end of the pool party, we then followed the crowd from the pool to the Manor nightclub for the after party, and we closed that down too, and then joined our new friends in the galley to grab some late night food. And we hung out there until nearly 4 a.m. just walking, laughing, and soaking up the night. And not because we were pounding drinks, but because we'd made so many new friends that none of us wanted it to end. And that was the theme of the entire sailing. Virgin Voyages gives you dozens of little chances to connect with people throughout the week. Not just the recycled trivia games you see on every other line, but fresh, creative activities that actually work. Conversation starters, shared moments, and inside jokes with strangers who don't stay strangers for long. Part of that is the ship's size. At 110,000 gross tons, it's less than half the size of the larger megaships, which means the friends you make on day one, you continue to see over and over again throughout the cruise. At brunch, at the shows, in line for coffee, and as you meet their friends, your circle keeps growing bigger. By the end of the cruise, I didn't just know names, I had a network, a group of people from all over the world who made the ship feel smaller, warmer and more alive. I boarded with my nephew, but I left with a whole crew of new friends. Even though we had a fantastic time on board, that had more to do with the people and the experience than the ship itself. Honestly, for a vessel less than 5 years old, the Valiant Lady might be the least impressive ship I've sailed. The food overall was solid, but not every venue lived up to the hype. Extra Virgin and the Wake were both disappointing. Maybe I just ordered the wrong items, but nothing stood out. We even paid extra for the oysters and the tomahawk steak at the Wake, since even though it's supposed to be an upscale take on a steakhouse, it didn't offer a ribeye or a prime rib, and the steak looked impressive, it had zero flavor. And the oysters were easily the worst I've ever had. But worst of all was the ship's design. It felt like a classic case of form over function, especially when it came to trying to navigate the ship. The signage on board was genuinely awful. In the elevator banks, you could find signs that would tell you what was on each deck, but there were no ship diagrams showing you where those places actually were. So unless you already knew, you had to just guess which direction to go and hope you got lucky. And when you did find directional signs, they'd point you to port or starboard, but give you no indication whether you needed to head forward or aft. We got turned around more than once trying to find a venue, and several repeat sailors told us it used to be even worse before they added some of the current signage. Pool space is another big issue. Virgin Voyages attracts a younger crowd that wants to be out in the sun, but the pools are shockingly small and constantly overcrowded. Not only are the pools tiny, but seating around them is extremely limited. I heard complaints about it daily. While I don't use the pool much myself, it's definitely a design flaw. The biggest flaw for me personally was the lack of quiet spaces on board. The dock is a good quiet spot outside, but it was too hot to sit out there for long, and there really wasn't a good quiet spot indoors to read a book or catch up on emails. I ended up at the grounds club trying to work, but the music nearby was so loud that I could still hear the bass through my noise-canceling headphones. There's also no drink packages on board, so if you're used to buying a drink package and being able to cut loose without thinking about individual prices, you'll definitely feel the difference. The drinks weren't outrageously expensive, but the a la carte model felt more like a trendy rooftop bar in Miami than a fun, laid-back cruise. Entertainment was another mess. While some people really dig the edgy, experimental vibe Virgin Voyages goes for, most of the shows felt a little too out there for our taste. The performers were clearly talented, but the productions often came off as weird for the sake of being weird. One show in particular had people walking out halfway through, not because it was bad, but because nobody could figure out what was going on. The casino was another surprise, and not in a good way. While casino fun matches the vibe of Virgin Voyages, their casino is vastly undersized. I tried to play craps one night, but the table was so crowded, it took several minutes between rolls and it was just pure chaos. For a cruise line that emphasizes connection and fun, this felt like a miss. A second craps table at minimum would go a long way. Basic Wi-Fi is included in the fare, and while it wasn't terrible, it definitely wasn't good either. I had to upgrade a premium Wi-Fi package, and while I did get my VPN to work, the speeds were frustratingly slow. And the Virgin Voyages app is perhaps the worst I've seen on any cruise line. It's not intuitive and had a few annoying bugs, like showing dinner reservations that weren't actually bookable. And for a cruise line that positions itself as modern and tech-savvy, the user experience fell flat. But more than any one issue, the thing I missed the most was a central open space with natural light that reminds you are in fact out to sea. The roundabout had some visual flair with its spiral staircase, but it only spans 2 decks and it doesn't come close to the open atrium vibes you'll find on most newer ships. Now, despite all that, I had an absolute blast on my first Virgin Voyages cruise, but there's still some things I learned that I will do differently next time to make a good experience even better. For starters, I'd book earlier. I locked this one in less than 45 days before sailing, which got me a great price, but by then, most of the restaurant reservations were gone. I had to take time out of our first afternoon on board to go fix it at dining reservations down in Razzle Dazzle. Not the end of the world, but it's time that I would have rather spent exploring the ship. Which brings up another interesting thing, that usually on most cruise ships you can board around 10 or 11 a.m. But on Virgin Voyages it's more like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. That does give you a bit more time to check out at the end of the cruise, but I would have rather had those early hours to explore the ship rather than a bit more time to sleep in at the end. And when it comes to dining, I might give Extra Virgin and the Wake one more chance, but that's it. Maybe I just hit them on off nights or chose the wrong dishes, but if they still don't deliver, I'd happily swap them for a second round of Gun Bay or Test kitchen or just hit up the galley. I also learned that the test kitchen menu changes depending on the night. We met a group of seasoned Virgin Voyages cruisers who told us the version on the last night was their favorite at test kitchen and invited us to join them for dinner, so we canceled our day 2 reservations and joined them on the final night instead. And to be honest, I'm really happy we did because they weren't wrong. The mushroom pate dish was way better than it sounded and probably my favorite dish of the entire cruise. With that rotating menu, I'd recommend stopping by early in the cruise to see which nights look most appealing and book based on that. One thing I will definitely do differently next time is buying a bar tab. There's no drink packages on Virgin Voyages and I wasn't sure how much I'd actually drink, so I skipped it because if it's unused at the end, you just lose that credit. But looking back, I would have saved money by preloading a bar tab and getting the bonus credit that comes with it. I'd also buy a future cruise voucher on board before the end of the cruise. It's a no-brainer if you're planning to sail again, as it gives you instant onboard credit and flexible booking perks. Maybe most importantly, I'd go next time with no expectations. Again, that mindset made all the difference. Virgin Voyages does things their own way, and if you spend your cruise comparing everything to what other cruise lines do, you'll miss the magic. But if you embrace the quirks, lean into the experience, and let go of the comparisons, you'll walk away with one heck of a vacation. Virgin Voyages is unapologetically different. And that's exactly the point. It's for people who want to ditch the cruise cliches and try something that feels younger, cooler, and more intentional. There's no cruise director, no Broadway-style musicals, and no forced fun. Instead, you get tattoo studios, immersive shows, and restaurants that rivaled land-based hotspots. It's also a great fit for people who care about wellness, sustainability, and inclusivity. You'll find cold-pressed juice bars, 0 single-use plastics, and a crew that's encouraged to be themselves, not just recite a corporate script. But just as important as who it's for is who it's not for. Virgin Voyages celebrates bold self-expression, from drag shows and playful performances to passengers rocking everything from ball gowns to banana hammocks. It's a cruise line that leans into fun, freedom, and a little irreverence. If you're someone who prefers a more traditional cruise experience, or you know you wouldn't feel at ease around things like gender fluidity, flamboyant fashion, or someone dressed as the Pope on Scarlet Night, this probably isn't your ship. That's not a criticism, it's just a heads up. Virgin Voyages knows exactly who it's for, and they're not trying to please everyone. And honestly, that's part of what makes it so good. So let me leave you with this. We live in a world that often tells us fun has to be loud, extravagant, or over the top. But what this cruise reminded me is that joy isn't always about spectacle. Sometimes joy is about connection. It's about being seen. It's about showing up exactly as you are and finding a place that's not only accepted, it's celebrated. I won't pretend Virgin Voyages is the perfect fit for every season of life. As a father with young kids, this won't be our go-to line. But while we won't be regulars anytime soon, I already know we'll be back. What made this cruise special wasn't the food or the shows, it was the people. By the end of day 1, I had already made a dozen new friends. By day 2, those friendships felt like they'd been years in the making. And by day 5, I was sharing stories I usually reserve for people who know me best. And in a world full of surface-level interactions, that kind of connection felt rare and genuinely meaningful. So if you've ever wondered what it might feel like to truly belong on vacation, Virgin Voyages might just surprise you like it surprised me. But here's the bad news. Not every cruise we've taken this year has delivered that same kind of magic. Some looked great on paper but fell flat, and others looked like they were built for someone else entirely. And when your vacation time is limited, you deserve to know which ships are worth it and which ones aren't. But the good news, I already ranked the first 10 cruises we took in 2025, from the biggest surprises to the biggest letdowns, and a few ships that completely defied expectations. If you want an honest, unfiltered look at what actually stood out this year, that's where you'll find it. So don't stop here. Come hang out with me in the next one where I spill the tea on what truly delivered and what left us wondering why we even bothered. If you're ready, I am. Let's go.